Oh, damn, okay.
You know,
No, I'm over here screaming. I'm like, no, I don't believe
I know you was having a same conversation. I know that was the same conversation you was having.
It really was. I was like, for real? I know the last thing you want is to have a system crash just before you go live.
Right.
So.
Right.
It's all right, though.
That's how you feeling, Vaughn?
Man, I'm telling you, man, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
Okay, wait. And people are texting me going, hey, are you going live in a minute? Are you on? Well, guys, we are recording and all this will be part of what's going to be shown. So I'm getting ready to plug in here that we are going live any moment. And so if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves.
All right, we doing your thing?
While I plug this in.
All right, I'll be right back.
I was just getting ready to say, what's up, Vaughn?
What's up? What's up, man? What's up? West Side?
The man with all the movie titles, the encyclopedia.
I'm telling you, man, I was like, wow, I got a lot. I was like, okay, all right, I'll be right back, though.
Okay, I'm going to have to plug stuff in later because even that doesn't want to cooperate in this moment. Technology.
Right.
It's all good.
I know you love it when it's working.
You gotta love it. Gotta love it.
And I do. I've learned to love it. I'm learning to appreciate it the more.
There you go.
Where am I?
Where's Mr. Black?
He's trying to get in. He just texted me. He's having technical challenges as well.
Okay.
I think that's like a common theme here right now.
Tell me about it. I know.
I'm trying to look. I've had stuff on my work computer, which is not working right now. So I'm trying to look for it in my notes.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
It's looking good though.
What you looking for? What you looking for, C?
Stuff that I had on my work computer that's currently frozen that I'm trying to wait for it to restart.
Uh-huh.
So I've got notes answering some of the questions that you had.
Let me pull those up.
He all productive and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I had a lot of questions. I didn't
jot-
think I had that many questions.
Well, I wanted to jot stuff down so I'm not the only one up here talking about some.
And that's what happened. Nobody else show up, and now
Right.
you forced to like.
Exactly. And I was like, come on, computer, work.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, guys, we've already been recording, but I just officially hit the go live button. And
there we go. I see it. We live. We live.
We're live.
Facebook.
We late, but we live.
Right.
Late and live.
Yep. And so just looking for Ken. I know he's trying to get in still, and definitely we're still keeping Jonathan in prayer. I know BJ is not going to be able to make it with us tonight. Work issues is calling him. And so we are officially live. So let me go ahead and say, good evening. I'm Dr. Sabrina Black, and welcome to the conversation on race with the BMWs. And you know, if you've been following the broadcast, that those are those guys who are Black men of wealth, of wisdom, and wit. And I have been so honored to have been able to spend the last 4 weeks with them. You know, when I sent them the email the other night, I was saying, man, I'm gonna miss these guys. It's just been a pleasure hanging out with them every week and getting a chance to hear what's on their heart and hear what's on their mind. I want to give a shout out to the guys from last week, the guys who joined us as special guests on the panel. You know, we had a full house last week. We had Mark Creer, we had Diedrich Tillerson, Marcus Grandison, Solomon Dudley. We had Terrence Quinn. And so again, just want to say thank you guys for stopping by, and we look forward to having you join me again in the future on the conversation on race. And so guys, welcome back tonight. So good to see you all. Yay, we're here and we are live. So Vaughn and Tamashian and Corey, and we know we have Mr. Ken going to be trying to jump in any minute. But as we talk about this conversation on race, there are a lot of places we can go. but you know, it's the last night. And so I want to kind of give you guys like a little open forum to say some of the things that you want to say, just to make sure we get those things in. But you know me, I got some questions and I'm going to pick up those as well. So Bob, were you just waving, or were you waving your hand trying to get my attention?
You know what? I wanted to make sure that we were on Facebook Live, because I kept pulling up your page, but I didn't see it. But we are live, and so I shared it from my Facebook page. So I just want to say hey to everybody that's followed Dr. Sabrina Black. So hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hey. And you know, listen, I got to tell you guys, you've been very popular. Each week you've hit over 1,000 views before the week was over. And I was like, man, people are really listening to what you have to say, because you've been talking some good stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, I've been listening, and I'm glad mine only counts once. So every time I sign back in, I don't get to add another count. I'm the same count. But people have been watching and people have been listening. So tonight, any shout outs? I want to make sure we cover all the shout outs, because again, I want to make sure that you guys just to mention the people that are important to you. You know, and even as we talk about that, you know, one of the things we can even start with tonight is, even as we talk about, you know, being a Black man of wealth, of wisdom, of wit, you didn't get here by yourself. And I didn't get here by myself either. You know, there are always those people who are pouring into us, who are speaking into our lives, who are helping us along the way on the journey. You know, we talked at the very beginning about in the conversation of Floyd calling for his mother. And we know that mothers have spoken into our lives and fathers have spoken into our lives. But beyond our moms and dads, who are some of the other people who have really made a difference for you? So whoever wants to go first, just jump in and talk about who some of those people were. All right, somebody unmute their mic and go first. I guess that's you, Bob.
I mean, it's me, right? You know, it all depends on at what point in your life, right? Because when you're young, it's your parents and it's your teachers. And then, you know, you go away to school, it becomes maybe your basketball coach, or it might become a teacher. And one of the things that I've always done is I've always stayed in contact with those people, whether it was Coach Gary Waters, who's retired coaching in the NCAA, and not just him, but maybe his son, Sean Waters, or, you know, even the people that's on the staff. And so you leave college, and then you have maybe a big cousin who taught me how to be an entrepreneur. And then from there, what I found was I wanted to just diversify my network. So I started hanging around successful people who didn't look like me. You know, whether it was a Nick Pagano, whether it was a Drew Woodford. Probably one of the biggest people in my life is a guy by the name of Coach Tomer. And so for me, when I look at, you know, my top 5 people, it would be my dad. It would be, you know, my pastor who's deceased, Robert Hill. It would be Dr. Frederick Sampson of Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, who served as like my grandfather in ministry. And then his daughter, Frida, is always so special. And even then, I remember I was mentoring Mike Dyson Jr., you know, and as long as Mike Dyson would mentor me, right, I would mentor his son. And then you kind of graduate, and then you step into that entrepreneur. And then I got Coach Tomer, and it was a Bill Hoffman, a Peter Jensen. And then I start looking at people who had made it in the business world that looked like me. And then I looked at people who didn't look like me. And so I reached out and I've been fortunate and blessed not only to have a good, strong support of African Americans, but just good people who had my best interests at heart that may have been my white brother. And so I kind of feel like Dr. King, right? When he said the movement wouldn't have been the movement had we not had our white Christian brothers and sisters.
Amen. I appreciate that. You know, even as you talk about our white Christian brothers and sisters, I think I'm going to start there, because there definitely have been some white brothers and sisters who've spoken into my life. And one who comes to mind right away would be Dr. Gary Collins. And Gary Collins is a Christian counselor. And he was like the ultimate Christian counselor back in the day. And he is still alive today and still working today. And I'm always forever thankful to him and the work that he's done. He even got a chance to endorse a couple of the books that I wrote. And, you know, and when I think about some of the things that he wrote at the beginning of the books and the endorsement, I just thought, wow, I actually know Gary Collins. I remember on a trip that I took to Romania in 2002, somebody came with this big book and they were like, do you know Gary Collins? And again, it's like one of those things that people ask you around the world, like thinking, do you know this person? It's like, no, you don't know that person. But I actually knew Gary, and I was thinking, yes. And I just saw Gary a couple of weeks ago at a Christian Counselors Conference. So it was really cool to be able to say, I know him. So definitely there have been others. But when I think about people who have really spoken into my life beyond my parents, you know, the first man I give shout outs to, of course, is my father, because he named me Sabrina, one who will soar the heights, but one who has no limit, you know, that I can accomplish anything. But then I think about my husband. my husband speaks into my life on a regular basis. Yeah, and I'm honored to be a married woman, submitted under the authority of my husband, willing to yield and be happy in yielding and submission to him. You know, I think about times when I have traveled to places like Cameroon or Liberia and things like that, and I speak and I get up and say, you know, I want to give honor to my pastor and to my husband who released me to come. And people are like, what do you mean release you to come? And I'm like, he released me to come. He gave me permission. I'm a wife. I have responsibilities. I'm not on my own. I can't just jump up and decide what I'm going to go do. But my husband released me to come. And I'm thankful for that. And I thank God for the times when he say, no, babe, you know, you need to settle down and stay home. And I may pout, but I'm thankful that he knows me, he loves me, he supports me. And so my husband speaks into my life. But then outside the family, I'm so thankful for men like Pastor Heyman Cross Jr., you know, who was one of the first people who saw gifts in me and saw talent in me and was willing to call me forward and say, hey, girl, you can do some stuff. You know, so I'm thankful for him. I'm thankful for people like Matt Parker, Dr. Matt Parker. And Matt has been my mentor for years. For me, Matt was the first Black president. You know, we didn't know what he was president of. We just knew he was a mover and shaker and making some things happen. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for people like Pastor Christopher Brooks, you know, who walked alongside me in ministry. And so again, I had these men who were speaking into my life, people like Dr. Willie Richardson. You know, back in the day, he was doing the single and married conference and the honeymoon conference, who taught biblical counseling. That's where I got my foundation. And so, yes, there are people who help make you who you are. And I'm thankful for that. So anybody else, some people who've spoken into your life?
Well, yeah, I definitely, this kind of goes into what we were talking about before with parents. And obviously my mom and my dad, humongous roles in my life. My mom showing me, you know, obviously the way of sticking to something, being a hard worker, taking care of her family. She was a single mom. She did everything for me and my sister that a great mom would do. Always encouraging, always supportive. My dad was always a part of my life, even though him and my mom weren't together. Again, this is a man who worked from, that's the one thing that everybody knows about my dad is he is a hard worker. He retired from the city of Detroit. He worked there my entire life. I mean, just a hardworking man, talking about waking up and going to work, being at work by 6 a.m. and working all day through nighttime. So those obviously are two very important people. But I also, I remember that I didn't even mention, and I don't like saying my stepmom, but my other mom, my dad's current wife. She's just an amazing person. I remember even being young, going to like graduations and watching her getting the diploma from like Wayne State or that kind of stuff. Like her always even pushing education. Or when we would sit down at dinner, some people would, it kind of varies what you would watch. She would always have on Jeopardy, and she'd be up there answering the questions faster than the people that are on Jeopardy. So she just always kind of taught those kind of things of education and knowing stuff. Honestly, just the power of knowing things. And then even when I go back home now, the kind of conversations that we have, where the education is not even necessarily about knowledge that's acquired in books, but knowledge of your people, knowledge of yourself, knowledge of how you can help. I think that all of those things are like amazing things. They're amazing qualities that I know she's taught me. So I think about her. I just heard Vaughn talk about, and even Dr. Black, you just talked about, but spiritual leaders. I remember when I was much younger, a man, he's deceased now, but his name was Wayne Bond, Brother Bond. And the way that the things that he taught me beyond, I guess the way that he taught the lessons in the Bible and how he taught those as real life lessons to me, those are things that I'll never, ever forget. And those are things that I even find myself telling other people. And it's like, man, where did I get that from? And then when you really think about it, it's like, yeah, this is from when I was 14. I know exactly where this is from. So I just think, there are just so many examples of many people. I feel bad because I know I'm leaving tons of people out, but just those kind of examples. I just think of like my aunts. Like I said, my mom had 4 sisters and no brothers, and these girls all raised each other essentially and helped raise each other's children. When you just look at that kind of stuff, I mean, you can't help but be inspired because everybody was just pushing. Everybody that was around me was just pushing to do more, pushing to help people. So those are my inspirations, even to this day.
You know, Corey, definitely we're going to leave some people out. I mean, because I got a whole list of people I'd want to name. And a lot of those people made a difference in my life. And as you think about people, you can say, oh, yeah, let me put so-and-so on the list. And let me put so-and-so on the list. So we can add people all night long because I'd want to add somebody who's deceased now, Bishop Ned Adams. I mean, Bishop Ned Adams was the one who got me my job at Ashland Theological Seminary. He's the one that helped push me further into leadership and to walk in other giftings and took me into areas in Nigeria. And so, again, just more people along the way. But there were also women, Corey, too, like you talk about your mom and her sisters. Man, and I don't know if these women know the difference they've made in my life. I know one does, my spiritual mom, of course, my natural mom, but also my spiritual mom, Renee Carter. You know, I always give a shout out to Renee because she discipled me for 3 years. I mean, she walked alongside me to make sure that Christ was formed in me. But then beyond Renee, there was Roberta Cross, you know, Pastor Cross's wife. There was Rebecca Osegbovo. There was Bridget Stansberry. And so again, it's all these other dynamic women, Renee Rochester, who were like, hey, girl, look, come on, come on. It's in you. Come on, let's bring it out, bring it out. And so I'm thankful for those women as well. All right, jump on in there to Marcian.
No, wait. Hold on. You talked. I left my mother-in-law out. Oh my gosh, she was like, before Tigo, she was like my first spiritual mother.
Okay, put her in there.
And so I just literally, I mean, she's no longer here, but you start saying, well, I left this person out. I left Dr. Heyman Cross and Dennis Talbert out, right?
Well, because they used to
right. Because when I was at Eastern, they used to do that. Dr. Sampson had invited me, but they used to do like this mentorship program at Wayne State.
Urbana conference or
yeah, whatever it was. And man, I mean, I can't forget. And I remember before, he used to talk to me about sex. And I mean, Heyman Cross was one of the first pastors who talked to me about sex as if just let me just stop. It's just T, your turn. My bad.
Go ahead, Tabashiai.
So, yeah.
I know lots of folks.
y'all got a really good memory. You know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure I do this a little segment, a little justice. I'm gonna go with quality over quantity. You know what I'm saying? No, I ain't gonna say that because if I forget some other people, they're gonna be tripping too.
That's right. Don't get yourself in trouble. Just name some people.
You know
Come
what?
back if you need to.
Just like Vaughn was talking about, it's like different phases of your life. You have different people that make impacts on you. You know, so one of the biggest impacts that I had was it was like my middle school gym teacher, Miss Northcross at Hampton Middle School. I was a guy that had I was a knucklehead, but I had like some potential. So she saw that, one of the first few people that saw the potential. And she had asked me one day if I had like some money. I mean, was I going to the prom? It was like they had like a little junior prom, and I'm like, I don't got no suit. I'm from the hood, and we rock those suits, And she was like, so how about this? How about I talk to somebody and I'll let you know. And I was all right. So she came over, she let me come over her house and cut her grass. She stayed like right down the street from the school. So I would literally cut her grass and she would give me like $20 every couple of weeks. And that was big money for me, middle school. And then she called the announcer, Gerald McBride, on the radio. He used to do the 92.3 things or whatever. So she called him up and was like, hey, I got this kid, you know what I'm saying, man? This guy, Gerald, came through, took me to Sam's downtown, got me a fresh suit. I ended up going to the prom, couldn't tell me nothing, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, that lady didn't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? She didn't have to invite me to her house and give me some money and encourage me. And you know what I'm saying? And then I built a relationship with him where, I started helping out in different things. So like, it was like, those were the little things that you see that have an impact on kids' lives. You know what I'm saying? Then as I grew up, I started having like spiritual fathers and parents and people that in the ministry that kind of help you out, like Pastor Larry Jordan at Family Victory Fellowship, Darius Marshall, who was like my mentor. I actually adopted him as a mentor because I went to Focus Hope Engineering Program and they wanted me to pick a mentor. And I was like, they gave me a list of mentors, get somebody from Ford, from Chrysler. I was like, I want a mentor that got his own business, that's in ministry, that take care of his family. Like, I ain't even looking at y'all list. And they wanted me to pick from a list. And I was like, look, man, I'm going to have you be my mentor. And he's like, I'm not even an engineer. I'm like, you don't have to be. Just come at this date. We're going to have a luncheon. And he ended up being my mentor. And he was like, exposed me to a lot of people. And Miles Monroe was like one of the other people that they exposed me to. And that made a major impact on my life because when I went to the Bahamas for the first time, I got on the airplane, I went to a youth conference and he was like, yo, you got to grow up. And, I'm kind of rambling, but like he really poured into me. And then I got books. I started reading and researching and everything. And
me and Vaughn having a hard time not jumping in over here. Look,
man, y'all had y'all turn. I got like 2 more people, you know what I'm saying? And then my pops, Eric Daniels, it was like it was a point in time in my life where I was like mad at my father for not being in my life. And he was there at the church. And then we just built a relationship where I started calling him Pops. He started calling me son. And for the last 20 years, that's been my dad. You know what I'm saying? We went out of town together. We hung out. You know what I'm saying? It was like we really built a real genuine relationship to the point where like that's my dad. You know what I'm saying? And then last but not least, I gotta give a shout out to this little old white lady from the suburbs named Eleanor Jositis. She is the co-founder of Focus Hope. And I met her like a year after Father Cunningham had passed away. So she was running Focus Hope by herself. And she was feisty. She was a feisty lady, you know, but she had our interests at heart. All these young Black engineers, like she saw in the future us being in boardrooms and running businesses and 500
Amen.
companies. And she really poured into us. And I got one quick story I got to tell you about her. It was snowing. It was like 2 feet of snow. And we were supposed to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. I left my apartment building. I got to work about, 6:30, 6:45. Eleanor was standing at the time clock with boots on. And she was like, what took you so long to get here? I was like, it was snowing. It was snowing for me too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, she like, I don't know, she about 75 or something at the time, 80, I don't know. She was like, I was like, man, she was like, you know what, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they'll eat you up with that lame excuse. You better get out to bed and be here on time. And man, I'm telling you, I was having dreams. I woke up in the morning, I was like, whoa, wait. Eleanor was like, you better get to work on time, you know. And, she passed away in 2013 or 14, man. I cried like a baby, man, because, she really poured into us. And we had etiquette classes and stuff. She don't want us to feel uncomfortable around anybody. She took us to Traverse City at the automotive conference, and we standing on top of the Grand Traverse looking down. And I'm like, man, this is beautiful. She was like, you gonna be able to afford this yourself? And then a couple years after I got married, I said, babe, we got to go on a vacation. We're going to the Grand Traverse. What's that? Don't worry about it. We went there and I stood up on that thing. I can afford to eat at the Grand Traverse. I looked out the window, the same window with a tear in my eye, like, thank you, Ellie Mae. I call her Ellie Mae. You know what I'm saying? So those little stories like that, where people see the potential that you have, and then they don't just say stuff, they actually do stuff and make an effort to help you out and to make a lasting impact. All right, I'm done. My wife made an impact on me too. I love you, baby. I love you, baby.
You got to put them in there. Listen, but listen, there are people who do make a difference in our lives and they make an impact. And so I would encourage anybody who is watching the show tonight, if you're thinking that your life is insignificant and you don't have value, do know that you matter to somebody. And that there's somebody who's watching you. That's all I always think about when the Bible says to walk circumspectly, meaning to pay attention to the people that's around because they're watching you. And so you don't know who's looking up to you and who you're a mentor for, because some of the people that we've mentioned, they probably had no idea the impact they made in our lives, but they did, and we're thankful for it. And you look around and you see these young kids, don't just talk about them, talk to them. Recognize that they have potential. You don't know that you're not talking to future leaders, future engineers, future entrepreneurs, future voters. And so again, we want to engage these young people. And so, we think about these people that we're giving these shout outs to, of course, the list keeps getting longer. We can't spend all our time doing shout outs, but I got to do the bishops. Look. So I got a Bishop John L. Jones who made a difference in my life. I got a Bishop Hank Washington who helped me start my nonprofit global projects. And like that quick story, I was at a convocation and he asked me, he says, hey, I hear you go to Africa. What are you doing over there? And so I said, I'm just doing different projects. And this was way back in the day. I didn't even have a name yet. He says, well, if you had money, what would you want to do? I said, I want to go do different projects around the world. And he says, well, why don't you go home and write up something on one page and tell me about it? And I'm thinking, man, I'm at church. I'm just trying to sing some songs, get some word, and go to bed. We ain't gonna get out of here till 11 o'clock at night. And he says, bring something back to the convocation tomorrow. Convocation is a week-long service. It's old-fashioned revival. You know, so I went home and I couldn't sleep that night thinking, what would I want to do if I had money, you know? And I started listing all these different types of projects I'd want to do to impact change in people's lives, from spiritual development and leadership training and helping vulnerable women develop businesses. And so I wrote it all down, one page, took it back to him. He says, not a problem. I'm going to have a lady come meet with you next week. I'm going to pay to get your nonprofit started. And I'm like, whoa. I'm telling you, young people, old people, when somebody tell you to do something, get busy, don't drag your feet, because you never know who's going to bless you. You know, somebody was telling me the other day that somebody passed out business cards, and to a lot of different people, only one person called. That one person got a check. And I'm like, don't miss the moment when people tell you to do something, get busy. And so people have been speaking into our lives over the years. And so we're here because other people have helped us. You know, but when we think about people back centuries ago, people have been helping for centuries. That's what Black people do. I mean, as a people, we come together. We are inclusive. We don't leave people out. We reach for the one who's down and out. We reach for the one who don't feel like they have anybody, because we want them to know that they are loved, that they are valuable, that they have significance, and that they too can make it. And so, guys, as we talk about those people who made a difference in our lives, think about some people way back in the day. Again, I know we gave some shout outs earlier about different inventors and people who have started things that maybe people weren't aware of. If you can talk some about people that you know about that you feel like we still need to mention their name, you know, whether it was names of books we didn't mention, names of movies that we didn't mention, names of people that we didn't mention. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Wow. You know, I think, you know, you got to look at a whole bunch of stuff, right? We could classify it from, you know, you got the movement people, you know, your Malcolm X and your Marcus Garveys and, you know, your W.E.B. Du Bois and your Booker T. Washingtons. Then you have your, before them, right? You got your Frederick Douglasses, you got your Phyllis Wheatleys. I mean, you know, you got the Harlem Renaissance, right? Most people don't know this, but I got my degree in literature. And so just James Baldwin was huge, right? You know, you had those people, and then you had your entertainers. You know, I'm a huge Magic Johnson fan, but even before Magic, you know, you had Julius Erving, you had people pave the way. And right here in Detroit, you got a guy by the name of Coach Ray Scott, who coached the Detroit Pistons, right? Who played in the ABA, and he was also Eastern Michigan's coach. And so you can classify it from literature to the movement to entertainers, from Michael Jackson to Prince, to Dorothy Dandridge, to Alfre Woodard, to Cicely Tyson. I mean, those are the Cab Calloway, right? Those are the people who paved the way. James Brown, you know. And so for me, I just been fortunate. And even when I look at my family, and I'm going to leave with this, you know, a guy asked me, said, you know, what's your name? And I said, Nickelberry. And in Texas, you literally had a Nickelberry, Texas. And so just in my family, it was people who paved the way. And so I just want to give a shout out to my ancestors on my dad's side. And even in Arkansas, you know, my mom's side, there's a cemetery after them, right? And so we have greatness. We just got to find it. There is a lot to be proud for, and to see how people overcome, like the Madam C.J. Walker. So I'm gonna give it over to you guys, because I named a whole lot of folk.
Yeah, yes, you named a whole lot of folk, you know. But even as you're talking about family people, I was just thinking that when we first started these conversations on race, you guys remember that it was because there was a group of Jewish moms who got together with African-American moms to talk, and a lot of different projects came out of that. And one of the projects that came out of it, one of the ladies wrote an actual article about her experience growing up in the South, and she referenced my mom in the article. And as she talked about, I was reading this, and I was like, man, that's my mother she's talking about. And she talked about Old Man Myrie. And Myrie is my mother's maiden name. And Old Man Myrie had 17 children. But then he had 12 that grew up into old age, and he had property, and he would refer to his property the same way the slave master referred to his property, as the big house. And so he had the big house up on the hill, and he had all this land, and enough land to be able to have a plot of land for every one of his children to build a house on. And so I think about how they had like Myrie Town, because there was so many Myries and so much family, that they had their own little town, their own general store. And just to realize that, you know, the Black people had a lot going on for a lot of years, and we still do. So somebody else, shout out to some names that we didn't get a chance to call. Get to the mic, Corey, can't hear you. There you go.
Okay. So last time I feel like I kind of rushed through, and I even butchered the name of one of the books. So I want to take my time and actually read, as opposed to attempting to go jog from memory the
All
name
right.
of stuff. So the speech that I referenced last time was Frederick Douglass. There's a speech, and I do not want to butcher the name again, so I'm actually looking it up as we speak. I'm sorry. Okay. What to the slave is the 4th of July. And like I said, I've mixed the words of that. I want people to really go and read what that means, because when you really get a grasp of this is free slave telling you what July 4th means. So this isn't, 100 years later. This is in the thick of it, what that means to him. His words are so powerful. And then if you go to and read, there are many biographies on Frederick Douglass. One that a recent one that's out, and again, I want to make sure that I am saying the name correctly. I'm not going to butcher it again. There it is. Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom. A really, really good book. It details, well, I'll let you read it, but it details his life, and it kind of gives you, I guess it gives you some context into why he wrote and why he thought the way that he did. So that's one person who I'd love for people to read him. Also, I know that a few people have mentioned Fannie Lou Hamer, which, because the voting thing has been something that I'll say, especially recently, it has really struck and hit home for me. And I remember in school reading about her. But recently, I went back and I actually watched the speech that she had with the Democratic in front of the Democratic committee, where she's explaining like how she was even there. Like it really all started from I won't say a whim, but it started from her attending a church meeting, a church gathering essentially, and wanting to register to vote. Her not even knowing, and this is in the 60s, that Black people could vote. She didn't even know that, she said. So she goes to attempt to register to vote, and she meets opposition there. And again, this is a story that you should read and you should hear her words, but she meets opposition just in attempting to registering to vote. She meets opposition in attempting to get back from registering to vote. Her speech about her experience when she was in that Mississippi jail is, it's just amazing. And it makes you feel like it's your responsibility. And again, you feel obliged to do everything in your power to let everybody know her story and the importance of voting. And so there are many stories like that. W.E.B. Du Bois, I know that we people have talked about him. And just even I guess people call it controversy, but the differences in between someone like W.E.B. and then you have Booker T. Washington, and then you have Marcus Garvey, and the differences that they have, but also the similarities that they have. And if you look at something like, I was going to say W.E.B. Du Bois, his the Talented 10, that concept of that, and the book of that. And while it had I guess you could call it controversial subject matter, as far as, I guess, it kind of pushed elitism, some people would say, and like elitism, we'll take it that far. But if you look at the concept of what he was saying, and what he was saying as far as how we move forward, it doesn't oppose the things that Booker T. Washington said or the things that Marcus Garvey said. All of those things come into unison with each other. So I just would like people to look at all of those things and take the good out of it, because they were, even though these are our heroes and these are inventors and these are people that we look up to, they were still learning as well. America was new to them. America's still changing today. So we need to take the best of their ideals and put them to use and do what we can to help.
Right. And Corey, even as you say that, I realize right now there are a lot of people that are considered controversial figures for us even right now. And I'm not going to call any of their names, but we need to, again, take the best of their ideals and figure out what can we implement. You talk about this issue about voting. We know the big election is coming up, but their primaries are coming up right now. And so I would encourage everybody who hadn't thought to vote to get out and vote, because your vote does matter. People fought and died for us to have the right to vote. So make sure you take advantage of that. Vaughn, you were mentioning Ida B. Wells. You want to talk some about that?
Corey, when he was talking about the voting, I just remember reading how she was used, right? They knew that she was talented for the women's suffrage movement. And once women got the right to vote, that group of women that she was courting that didn't look like her, that, you got to be careful, just say, the white people just turned their back on Ida B. Wells. you know, here she is in the front line. She's working hard for all women to get the right to vote, especially them, because she thought, you know, I fit in too. Then all of a sudden, when they got the right to vote, it was like, we're done with you. I mean, it's crazy.
And that seems to be a continuing narrative, you know, that once people get what they want, it's kind of like, we're done with you. So let's switch the conversation. And I know you got some people you want to mention too, Tamasha, and you can mention them in the context of this next question, is that I've talked to several African Americans, Black people, people of color recently, because there's been so much racial tension going on about this whole idea of coming to the table. And people have been getting a lot of pushback in terms of, I don't want to be at the table. People are saying, I want to build my own table. I want to call people to the table. And yes, there's a place for that. But the reasons people don't want to go to the table. So Tamasha, if you talk about some of those names you want to mention, then also talk about why is it that Black people are hesitant to want to come to the table?
Because every time we come to the table, we end up being the dinner. That's what's going on.
You didn't say that. You didn't say that.
Just carving up, you know, anyway.
But we'll talk about it, because again, people need to understand what you mean. We're laughing, but you really do mean something by that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I see why people, it's very important for you to have your own table, you know what I'm saying? Because anytime you are invited to a seat at the table, that seat can be always taken away from you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're invited, you know, and a lot of times there's not a seat at the table for us to express our issues or what's going on, and to have that equality or equal voice where, like, yeah, what I'm voicing is being heard and taken into consideration, and it carries the same weight as the other people at the table. Not as if we're lesser, like, yeah, you can come to the table, like the kids get to sit at the little kids table and the grown folks sit at this table. Well, come on over here and tell us about your day. Like, no, we don't want that kind of seat at the table. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, like, a lot of the scholars that we reference, they encouraged us to do for ourselves and to build our own table. Like, if you mentioned Booker T. Washington, he was talking about that, but he actually was saying, hey, we need to build our own agriculture, build our own bricks, make our own buildings. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to build a community amongst ourselves, and then we can sell our bricks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then when you come to the table, you know, like other communities, like, I haven't heard a big push to get Chinese voters to vote. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are building their table, and when they come to the table, they got like economic power. They got, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of resources that they can say, all right, this is what we're getting ready to do. You know, us voting is just an illusionary right when we don't come with that economic power. You know, so it's very important for us to build our own table, and then as a group have that power to go to other tables, you know. So a couple of people that I want to talk about was Dr. Amos Wilson. Dr. Amos Wilson was an author. He actually wrote a book called A Blueprint to Black Power. And the whole thing about, like, Black Power, a lot of people get confused with the term. It's about you having power to do stuff for yourself. It's like you being in control of the resources in your own neighborhood. Like, as a kid growing up on Grand River and Schoolcraft, I went to the grocery store. There's an Arabic guy that owned the grocery store, the gas station. Then there's an Indian guy that owned the cleaners. And then there's some Asian guy that owned the hair place. You know what I'm saying? It was like, well, what do we own?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Can we at least own and control the resources in our community? And it was like, a lot of these people that have stores in our community, they're not coming to patronize the businesses in our community, but we patronize them. So it was like, we have to develop our own power. You know what I'm saying? Being able to do work ourselves. And another person I really love is Ivan Van Sertima. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima wrote this, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. He wrote a book called They Came Before Columbus. And he was talking about the African presence in the Americas before the Europeans came over here. And it's a controversial book, but he cites facts, and, you know, like, he even referenced the things that is published from Christopher Columbus in his journals, like, you know, so he points to the things that he says to show that it was actually Africans over here before he even got over here, you know. So, and then Joy DeGruy, she wrote a real book called The Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome.
Yes, I'm reading it now again.
It's a very powerful book. I started highlighting some stuff that I really like, and next thing you know, I had a whole yellow book. I mean, it was like I was highlighting everything. Yeah. So, I mean, that's good for everybody to read, because there are some things that we do that we have no idea that it is an effect or a result of history and our ancestors being treated a certain way, and those residual effects still begin to take place in our lives, and we don't have no idea that it's happening. So, but yeah, that's it, you know.
That's a lot. I got a lot of places I want to go, but let me say, as you talked about this table and the fact that in the Black community, everybody owns something but us, you know. And then I think about places like Black Bottom or the North End of Detroit, how those were Black communities that had all Black businesses, you know. And I think about going to Africa, man, like I said, that was one of the beauties of Africa. Everybody owned everything, and it was Black owned. And I don't know that we understand the economic value of our dollar, and how many of our dollars are spent everywhere else. And so there have been several campaigns recently about Buy Black or Don't Shop Today. And again, it's because we have economic power when we come together that we don't realize or understand how to maneuver. Von, you want to jump in and say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking when he said a name and he was talking about it, I was thinking of the book Before the Mayflower, which was actually a great book. But when we're talking about names, I think, you know, when I went to college, Jawanza Kunjufu.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. That's a good name, though.
Yeah, you know what? When he came out, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, and I just learned something from him. I remember him talking about how malt liquor, you know, how you couldn't purchase malt liquor outside of the urban areas. And so when I started working in Detroit, I was like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. White people drink malt liquor too, right? But the reality of it is they didn't. And so Coke malt liquor and the stuff that was, you know, so when we start talking about economic empowerment, I started thinking about Jawanza Kunjufu and the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. Now we talk about, you know, the prison pipeline. And I think it's so complex that there's no right answer. There's so many things that we have to do. There's so many things that we have to learn. And there's also so many things that we have to unlearn, you know, in order for us to move forward. Back over to you, I'm sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. Definitely a lot of things that we need to unlearn, but it's not just things that we need to unlearn. I think as a people, as a culture, as a community, a lot of us need to unlearn some things. So there have been several letters in circulation over the internet over the past few months. You know, of course, we went from pandemic to pandemonium. We went from the corona crisis into racial crisis. And so these letters were basically, dear white people, you know, these are some things I need you to know. But, you know, there were also some Dear Black People letters that need to be written. And so kind of want to hear from you. And, you know, if you're going to write the letter to Dear White People, you know, because we have a lot of white people watching and people of other cultures who are watching, who are saying, let's hear what these BMWs have to say and what advice are they going to give us. And so people really do want to see change. I don't think the people who are adversarial are the ones who are watching this show, but the people who are watching the show tonight are the ones who are saying, you know what, help me. I really do want to make a difference. I really do want to know how can I impact change. And so what would you say in a letter starting, Dear White People? Don't be shy now.
I guess I'll jump. You know, it's interesting you said that because when President Obama was running from office, I had a good friend who was white evangelical. We talk, we're real good friends. And I start noticing his ideology, not just political affiliation, right, but his ideology. And I said, you know what, Jerry, we need to come out with a book, you know, and that book would literally be As a Black Christian to a White Christian, because I realized that and the things that I was hearing during President Obama running for office, right, and we were talking about race, and I remember talking to him and telling him that race was still a big issue in America. And I say, why don't we come out with a book from your perspective, from my perspective? And his response was this: no one would care about it, right? And so when you write a book, right, you want to make sure that is worthy for people to read. Well, see, no one would care about it for him because race wasn't an issue. There's a great book that talked about Divided by Faith. And it was talking about why is it that, Blacks who typically, and again, I'm not saying you got to be one or the other, but it was just a great book that talked about how Blacks who used to predominantly, overwhelmingly vote Republican now tend to vote Democratic, yet they grew up in church and they had those social issues. Those conservative social issues. And so just the conversation with Jerry and then reading that book, and it talked about how they took a group of white Christians during slavery and asked them, was there a race issue in America? And those people said no, right? And then they did another survey during the Civil Rights Movement. Is race an issue in American history, currently? And do you know those white evangelical Christians said race wasn't an issue? And so when I was listening to my friend and we were talking, and I said, Jerry, this book would have been good, to all of a sudden go back to Jerry now and say, you know what? We missed an opportunity per se. Because if we would have jumped on it, man, that book could have been started reading to help us bridge the gap and start that racial reconciliation. But because—
Not too late, still write the book.
All right, well, and we're working on it, but white Christians have to understand that, you know what, our world is totally different. It is so different. And so what would I say? And I'm gonna give it over. I would say what would I've read enough scriptures and I preach enough sermons to know that God would have a conversation, and that conversation would be different. That conversation he would have with that, with that group of Black folk would be, listen, promotion comes from me, right? I lift you up. I'm the one that you get your strength from. And he would give that responsibility and remain faithful and, do the things. And if you do this, you'll be blessed, right? He'll say to meditate on his word. But as that conversation shifts and he had an audience who was white, he would say, don't you know that's your brother? Don't you know there's things that's in his way that whether or not you notice this hinders and hampers him from learning? And so I think we have to understand, just like you might have a parent who has two kids, they may have a different message to those two different children. And it's not the same message for that person. I remember listening to Bill McCartney, Coach McCartney at Buffalo, and he was talking of Colorado. And when he started talking about how his white players or how his Black players had a disadvantage over his white players, do you know that movement of Promise Keepers didn't get the funding that they used to get because they told him not to talk about it?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a shift in Promise Keepers when that happened, but there's a new shift, and Promise Keepers is on the rise again, and I'm excited about that and excited to be a part of the new thing that Promise Keepers is doing because they are having a different conversation. But I would say go back and write the book. Corey, dear white people, what do you think that they need to know?
This has actually been one where I'm
speaking to the mic.
I'm attempting to even think about how to even formulate this. So in doing that, I've watched other people's. I've watched, there's celebrities who've done this. There are, regular people, average Joes. A lot of people have done this in some variation, YouTube, posts, whatever. And I think that my thing, the thing that I keep coming down to is in this effort, we're all saying everyone needs to. This is time for people to listen. This is time for people to learn. This is time for people to educate. But this is definitely time for people to listen. And I think that my letter to white people would more be a question to white people. What are the things that are hindering the connection or because there feels like something is still missing. Like we've had slavery, we've had Jim Crow, we've had civil rights movement, we've had so much stuff. And there are, I won't even say there's an overwhelming majority, but there's a large group where you'll still see people in St. Louis waving automatic rifles for peaceful protesters going to there are just so many examples. And I'm not talking about like the people who will, like the officer who did the despicable thing to George Floyd, where if you're going to be that callous where you can do that to a human being and take their life, there's probably not going to be a whole bunch that I'm going to be able to say to reach you. But it's those people in the middle or who are on the fence who it seems like man, it feels like they get it, but something is still missing. I think one example that I think of, and I'm a huge sports nut, but I think of recently, Drew Brees, the comments that he made regarding kneeling the national anthem. He never said, there weren't disparaging words towards Black Lives Matter, or any of that. But his correlation of kneeling and disrespecting the flag, it hurt Black people to the core. And the reason why it hurt them is because they've seen the efforts that somebody like Drew Brees has done in New Orleans, like immediately following Katrina, and even since he's made that remark, him attempting to backtrack or make amends for. Him and his wife even just recently donated to other things, like, and I mean, that's just one example, but you see these examples of white people who it feels like they support, even like we were just saying, where Ida B. Wells, it feels like you have their support, but there's something where it just still feels like there's a disconnect. Like, what would it, I know some people are very analytical, so they want to see statistics. So show me the statistical data of how, slavery still affects Black people. Or some people are emotional and they want to hear examples and stories. So, but we've done all that. We've got all of that. So what's the disconnect? What would it actually take for you to empathize and see, you know what? Although I may not agree with every single point that they're making, the overall larger picture is that at the end of the day, Black people have not been treated fairly since the moment that they have been in the United States of America. What is it that we're all going to do so that everyone, specifically Black people, because when you lift Black people, you will lift everyone, because you've treated them like the lowest of the low. And in any situation, whether it's in an organization, whether it's a country, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, the person who you wouldn't necessarily put at, I guess, that top of that totem pole, or who you would consider the lowest, if you can lift that person up, then that's what's going to be most important. That lifts everyone up. So that would be my thing for white people. What is it that we can do? What's the disconnect? What is it that you need to hear? What is it that you're looking for so that you can get what we're saying? Why is there still that?
For them to do some soul searching.
Right. And to stop putting it on Black people to figure out racism, because Black people didn't create racism. So tell us, we'll help through, but what's the disconnect? What are you not seeing?
All right, that's some good stuff there. All right, go ahead, Tamashian. Dear white people.
This is a tough one. This is a tough one. And the reason I say that, because the extent of the problem is so deep embedded into the culture and the DNA and the fabric of this country that it's hard to remove. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like it's all right, y'all, racism going tomorrow. Like this is something, it's two things that struck me as a young boy, just watching like TV and looking at history. The first thing was that I was watching like, I think it was like Arkansas. I think they was trying to integrate schools for the first time. And the governor had brought like the National Guard to stop these people from going inside of the school, and as the kids was going out, they was like yelling at them and throwing stuff, and and then stuff started happening. People started getting hit and fighting and all that stuff. And I just said to myself, I was like, that's not ordinary hate. Yeah. Like that's something different than hate that, somebody did something to me and I just hate them. Like that hate was like so deep. And as a kid, I'm like, my biggest question to any white person or anybody who support racism is like, why are Blacks hated the way they're hated? Like, that's not ordinary hate. I mean, not saying hate is ordinary, but that was much deeper than I had experienced. And the second thing that kind of traumatized me was learning that white families back in, 1800s or whatever, they were like what we would do as far as Easter clothes shopping. Like, we would go to the stores, get sharp and everything, and everybody get outfits and matching and everything, and we invite everybody out. And they, all right, y'all, we're getting ready to have this big party and everything. And they would go and invite everybody out. But they would invite everybody out for the lynching of a Black person while they had on these best suits, right? And then they would turn around and take a family picture with the man hanging with their kids. Now we talking about 4 or 5 years old and they looking in the camera like they having a good time. I'm like, that hate was embedded in them as children, and then they grow up and have children, and they grow up and have children, and guess what? We got to deal with their ancestors who dealt with our ancestors the way that they did, right? That's tough. That's tough.
I don't
you know
like
what I'm saying?
I don't like hearing it even. Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, but it's facts. You know what I'm saying? And you know, so where does that hate come from? Because that's, I mean, that anytime you do root cause analysis, you have to find out the root cause. Like, why is this the way it is? And until you answer the why, or why is like that, you can't go about fixing it. And I don't have the answer. I don't know why we're hated the way we do. Although I got some good ideas. I've done a few research projects, but I'll leave that up to, you know, the white people.
Right. Listen, so, I mean, you guys went way deep. So dear white people, they got Von's letter, they got Corey's letter, they got Tamashian's letter, and they looking at these letters and they like, man, what y'all want me to do? You know, Corey want me to go on a spiritual enlightenment retreat and just dig deep into my soul, and Tamashian want me to look into my historical roots and look at my family lineage, and Von wants me to look at all the systemic issues, and it's like, I just want to know what to do tomorrow. You know, so dear white people, they talked about some things that you need to do, but let me make it simple for you. There are no innocent bystanders. If you are standing by watching what's happening, you are guilty. If you see injustice, you need to make a difference, and you have a voice. Dear white people, you know, when we talk about white privilege, don't get mad, don't get angry, realize you have privilege and use it to all of our advantage. See, because you have privilege, open the door not just for you and your friends and your family, open the door for us too. Dear white people, you know, it's nice to have a seat at the table, but it doesn't matter if you had the meeting already. You know, having a seat at the table don't matter if you've already made all the decisions. And so if you're going to invite me to the table, invite me to the meeting you had before y'all came to the table. So dear white people, think about inclusion. Think about the fact that we really are one people. Dear white people, you know, I'm your sister from another mother, like it or not. I'm your cousin, and I'm not the black sheep of the family. I'm the black queen of the family. You know, I'm royalty in the family. I'm part of the royal priesthood. Dear white people, we have more in common than you think. And so let's sit down and talk about it and get to know what we have in common. Let's figure out what we can do together. Yeah, I appreciate what Corey said about it. It's not on us to tell you what the problem is. You need to figure out the problem too. But it's on all of us to come together and talk about what we can do to make a difference. So dear white people, this is not a group of people who hate you. We're disappointed, we're hurt, we're discouraged, but we don't hate you. We want to love you. We want to get to know you. We want to do things with you. We want to grow together. This is our nation. You know, it's interesting to me, guys, and I don't know about you, but as I've traveled around the world, I find it ironic that every place you go, people identify with their country versus their culture. You know, we are African Americans, but most of us have never been to Africa and are not from Africa, but we don't want to claim just America because we don't feel like America's our home. But when I was in Jamaica, I didn't meet Asian Jamaicans, Black Jamaicans, African Jamaicans, white Jamaicans. People said they were Jamaican. The same thing when I was in Italy. They didn't define themselves as African Italian. They were Italian. You know, they weren't white Italian. They were Italian. But here in America, because we feel so displaced, we don't feel connected. We're African American. We're American. So dear white people, we're as American as you are, because a lot of you didn't come from here either. You came from someplace else. But now that we're all here, let's work it out together. So guys, but we talk about what white people need to hear, but what do Black people need to hear? Because we need to write a letter to them too. And there's been some of those circulating, because unfortunately we do have some very, very angry Black people. So dear Black people, what do they need to hear, Tamashian?
Yeah, they need to hear we got a problem that we got to fix. We got some root cause analysis too. So here's the thing, you know, and we learned this in algebra, right? Anytime you want to solve an equation, you got to address both sides of the equal sign.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Come on now.
Right?
I like math.
So we have a problem here. We have a problem here. You know, there are some things that we have to do as a community. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to learn how to love and respect each other, regardless of our views. You know what I'm saying? Amongst the Black community, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I can see people arguing about Kobe and Jordan or LeBron or whatever. I mean, they argue each other back and forth, but at the end of the day, they got love, right? You know what I'm saying? In some barbershops. But, you know, for the most part is we got to be able to have differences amongst ourselves and still see each other as kings, queens, and people that are worthy of that respect. And the biggest problem that I see amongst the community is when we don't feel respected, we react in a very negative way. And that's why kids get kicked out of school, because somebody dissed them, somebody disrespected them, you know. And if we can embrace the love and respect amongst each other, we'll go a long way. You know what I'm saying? If we go into a business, a Black-owned business that's not treating you right, and you deal with them with love and respect and let them know, hey, I'm gonna work with you until you get it right. Or I'm gonna find another Black business until you get it right. And then they'll get it right. You know what I'm saying? Like, but don't
tear up the store.
Yeah, you know, go rip stuff off and, you know, deal with people with love and respect. You know what I'm saying? And teach your children love and respect. So if I can, well, you know, have two things, if we can do that, then everything else will pretty much fall into place. If we can respect ourselves, respect our women, respect our children, you know what I'm saying? Listen to respectful music, watch respectful movies, you know, that hold us up with dignified and with dignity. You know what I'm saying? And I think if we do that, I think we'll be good.
All right, dear Black people, Corey.
Yeah, I definitely second everything Marcian just said. I think that leading with love that's the biggest thing for Black people. I know that this is even something that I struggle with. When you see someone take a narrative and flip it, you can almost find yourself cut off where you stop listening, where you're doing the exact thing that you don't, where you're telling other people not to do it. So I think that my letter to Black people would be, let's just make sure that we are listening. And I know that sometimes that can be a slippery slope. I know we even just a minute ago, we were talking about, I guess current examples of this would be like, I know Terry Crews right now is kind of going through a big thing where the message, I'll say this, sometimes it can feel like people are presenting themselves as more of a roadblock as opposed to a stepping stone type of situation, where it's like, although the message of what you're attempting to say might be true, you don't want to get it mixed in with, and you don't want to get it mixed in with another message and dilute another message. So, and sometimes you need to keep issues separate. So when you see, again, me, for example, whenever I hear others say, well, you guys are so worried about racism, but what about Black on Black crime? It drives me absolutely bananas. Like, it drives me insane, because there are two separate issues. Although they have overlapping situations, those are two separate issues. And while Black people, we can worry about Black on Black crime and worry about social justice and racial issues as well. But what I want Black people to do is, don't let, when you hear that one thing that turns you off automatically, don't stop listening to everything else that's being said. Take what you can, educate yourself, and really more so than anything, listen to the argument that they're making so that you can understand where they're coming from, and then you can refute it. That's always been one of my biggest things just in life. I'll listen to what you're saying. I'll be quiet. I'll listen to everything you're saying so I can absorb all of your thoughts, and then I'll just shut it down one by one. I even, to this day, like, I'll encourage my friends, hey, I know that you may not agree with some of the views that you see on Fox News, but I encourage you to, every now and then, Just peek your head in on Fox News. Hear what they're saying about you. Hear what they're saying about your people. Hear what issues they're bringing up so that you can educate yourself so that when those topics come up, you don't even need, you can feel confident in disputing whatever their facts are. And again, not saying that you need to listen to change your way of thought, but you need to listen so that you know exactly what they're saying about you. You need to know what they think about you. You need to know where their research is coming from so that you can shut it all down. And honestly, it feels good when you do it.
All right, go ahead, Bob. Dear Black people.
We see. I was going to go back to dear white people when he mentioned Fox News, but I'm gonna say, you know what? I remember my first like official basketball practice at Eastern, and you guys know Eastern Michigan University. If you go on the court, right in the middle, they had a big, just a big E. And I remember my coach just went up there and he said, "Vaughn, come here. You know what that E represent?" And I was like, "Yeah, that E represents Eastern Michigan University." He said, "No, that E represents no excuses." And so I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to just tell our people, number one, educate yourself. Past the situations that's going on now and the future. Because I think we just tend to be reactive, right? If I look at the movements, right, Black people in America, for the most part, have been reacting to stuff. And I think we need to be proactive. Now, again, there's been times where we have been proactive, okay? But as a group of people, no excuses, being proactive. Don't wait till you get somebody in office that you don't agree with and then try to vote the person out. You should have been doing this prior to. I think we have to educate, and I know Corey's gonna like this, we have to be educated voters. Not only do we have to be educated voters, what I'm finding out is we have to be educated in our belief system. I don't know how many times I go to church and I'm teaching, and the majority of the people have no idea of just very basic Bible doctrine. And so that's not just a Black issue, right? That is an issue all across at least the American culture. But when it comes to dear Black people, I would have to go back and, there's a couple things I would say. That you are fearfully and wonderfully made. God didn't make any junk, right? I don't care what your skin color is. We would hear things, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. I need you to fall in love with who you are, with how God made you. Yes. And then from there, I need you to know that there is no ceiling that's stopping you from being what you really want to be. And that is my conversation. That as a community, because I think we got to get back to that community concept. As a community, we have to remember that we need to love each other, right? Just as God loves us. And so a lot of the things that we see, a lot of it can be solved with two simple principles. And the greatest commandment, number one, to love the Lord thy God with all their heart, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And in the meantime, remember that you are wonderfully and fearfully made.
I love it, Don. So dear Black people, absolutely, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And, and you should know that from A to Z. And I talk about this all the time, but you need to spend time just looking at the alphabet and identifying who you are in Him so that you can remind yourself when other people are trying to diss you, you can tell yourself that I am accepted in Christ, that I am the beloved, that I am blessed and highly favored, that I am chosen, that I am delivered, that I am elevated, that I am forgiven, that I am God's handiwork, that I am healed, that I am in Him, that I am kept, that I am loved, that I am more than a conqueror, that there is no condemnation in Christ. So from A to Z, you need to be able to tell yourself, and I go through that on a regular basis, just remind myself of who I am in Him. Look up your own alphabets. I know you said, give us the rest of them. But listen, from A to Z. But dear Black people, here's what I want you to know. Do the work. Dear Black people, read the book. Dear Black people, don't make excuses. Dear Black people, you are amazing. You really are great. And so I have this organization for little girls called Girls with Great Potential, but there's boys with great potential, men with great potential, women with great potential. You have great potential within you, but you got to do the work and you got to read the book. and you got to stop making excuses, and you need to get busy. Turn the TV off. Dear Black people, the revolution will not be televised. I see you laughing, but the revolution will not be televised. It might be digitized, but listen, we got to get off social media and we got to get off TV, and we got to do the work. You know, and a couple other things real quick. Dear Black people, you know, this is something my father taught me early on, and it's because I was a busy child. I wanted to do a lot of things, but he had 3 basic rules, and they were: put things back where you got them from, play nice with other kids, and finish what you start. So dear Black people, quit starting stuff and finish something. Dear Black people, yes, there's a lot of tension and you are not welcome everywhere, but go to places that you're welcome. You know, I always tell people, don't go where you tolerate it, go where you celebrate it. And so find the people who celebrate you and celebrate what you're doing, and spend your time in those places and create loving communities of people, because we got to get back to community. Dear Black people, realize it ain't all about you, it's about us. And it's about us as a people, Black people, white people, every color person, because God only made one people group. It's the human race. And so it's about all of us. All right, guys, as we close out, you know, and I hate to see it end. It's like, I'm going to miss you guys. Okay, take a deep breath. But you gotta know, and I want to let you, everybody who's viewing know, too, I get to hang out with my sister starting next week. And for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be doing a show on colorism, talking about this whole issue of light skin and dark skin, and why guys like you pick light skinned girls versus dark skinned girls, and girls who passed and couldn't pass, and all those types of issues. That's coming up in the next 4 weeks, starting next Monday. So please tune in for that. We have a whole panel of women who are going to be joining us, a range of assorted chocolates, from light and white chocolate to dark chocolate. So please tune in for that. But what's happening for you guys? What's coming up for the BMWs? What's on your plate? What are some of the things you have going on? Vaughn, Tamasha, and Corey, what's up next for you?
Got quite a few things going up. So my wife and I, Tavia, own a dance studio. So we got a big recital we're getting ready to show. It's a different one. We didn't do it inside of a theater this time. Did it outside, and we recorded it and everything. So it's being edited right now, and I think we're going to show it on the 30th of this month. So be looking out for that. Also, yeah, this right here, Africa Through the Eye of the Visionary, right? It's a documentary that we shot, Waka and myself. We plan on releasing it next month. More likely to be on Vimeo. But we toured Egypt and Ethiopia, and we just told the story from African American and African going over there and traveling and everything. So that'll be out pretty soon, and give people education. Show people what they haven't seen in Africa. The beautiful parts of Africa. Us growing up, we hear a lot of bad things about Africa, but there's some beautiful places in Africa. So we got that going on. And then my wife and my children, we put together this thing called Jones Family Reverse. We put together that was really cool.
I liked watching pieces of that.
Yeah, so we put together a mini movie where my wife and I act like our children, and our children, they were playing the role of the adults. And we had all kind of issues going on or whatever. And so we want to do more of that. And we plan on going to Patreon to get some people to support us to help us do that. And somebody said I should point out a couple of the movies that I got back here. So this right here is Cody High. You can see that on Amazon. And this is the one that won the Emmy Awards. Walter V. Marshall, Daryl Bradford, myself. We produced this film along with Chris Lambert from Life Remodel. We follow what they're doing. They're doing awesome work in the city. And then Life in Osborne, you can watch that on YouTube. See, type that in, Life in Osborne. Look up A Love That Hurts. That's our first film that came out in 2013. That's on Amazon Prime as well. But yeah, I enjoyed my time with you all. I learned a lot. I made some new friends. I'm Facebook friends with a few people and everything. And I enjoyed the conversation. And I appreciate you giving us the platform to be unapologetically Black. All right.
You guys all sporting your stuff tonight. Look. All right. Why don't you go ahead and jump in there, Vaughn? Tell us what you got coming up. What's next for you?
You know what? It's just economic empowerment. But that's going to be ongoing. But you know, I'm thinking about, and I'm real serious. I'm just ready to pull the plug on it. Starting a new business, and that business is just teaching Black people how to protect themselves. I think that's huge. You know, I grew up in a place where I'm from Saginaw, Michigan, and so, you know, in the hood, it's not like, you know, you try to get guns off the streets. But I think we live at a time where people need to know, you need to be a responsible gun owner. Not everybody. If you have a bad temper, then, you know, no, not you. But I just think that, you know what, that is just so important, that you know how to protect your family. So I'm thinking about becoming a firearms instructor, showing people how to do it the right way. You know, I think people need tools, and then the tools in the right hands are just an awesome thing.
All right, Corey, what you got coming up next?
Well, my biggest thing is always, like Vaughn alluded to, it's always about education. And really, it's just about spreading the word. Because I know that there are times where we get information and not everybody has it. And I just think it's our job to spread it as much as we possibly can. So right now, my biggest thing, and obviously it's because this election is coming up and this is important. And this is something that, like you said, primaries, a lot of them have already happened, but primaries are still underway. We need people to vote. We need people to do their research, find out who stands for what, and vote accordingly. And we need people to know that these are rights. So it's not something where, because I think sometimes people feel like you're pushing them to vote, or just like how Vaughn was just talking about Second Right Amendment, you're pushing them to get a gun, or First Right Amendment, we're pushing you to speak up. No, but these are rights that you have, and so we just want you to know, hey, these are things that you can do, that you have the right to do. Educate yourself about it, and then if you choose to do it in a informative and educational way that's going to help everybody. And so with that being said, I'm going to continue to educate about voting rights, history, suppression, current efforts, that kind of stuff. And then also in my quest of attempting to find my place of how I can help, just in working in corporate America over the past almost 15 years or 14 years, I'm just trying to find ways where I can personally affect diversity, inclusion, social justice efforts in the corporate world. And then I'm going to attempt to spread that out beyond just my company, because I've worked for a few different companies at this point. So I want to spread that out first corporate world. And then I know that education starts from much earlier than in the corporate world. So all of that needs to be translated to early education, whether that's after school programs, schooling, that kind of stuff. So a lot of ideas on the plate, and essentially just trying to learn as much as possible so I can sort it all through and give all this information out.
Wow, that's a lot you guys got going on. And I know the other guys who are not able to be with us tonight have many things going on too. And some of you, people have been calling me about you. You should know that, wanting to know how to get in touch with you. So if you guys would, please drop your emails and your websites online so people can know how to reach out to you. Somebody already contacted me, wanting to get in touch with Corey. There's a voting initiative that's happening in the Chicago area. And they were like, how do we get in touch with Corey? Because we need his insight on some of the things that we're doing. People were asking me about some of Tamashian's movies. They kept saying, well, where's this visionary movie? So I'm glad that you had the poster for that, Tamashian. And so again, people are calling and asking, how do they follow up with you guys? And so of course I miss having Mr. Ken here with us tonight. You know, he's in the witness protection program, so I can't tell you where he is tonight or what he had going on. And that is a joke for those of you who are watching. BJ was not able to be with us tonight, but we want to thank you, BJ, for joining us. BJ works at the Block, one of the restaurants on Woodward downtown, and he had lots of people calling and making shifts and movements. And as you remember, Jonathan lost his dad and is traveling, and so to continue to keep him in prayer. But in terms of things that I have going on, because you guys know, I always got something going on. I really do believe in doing my part for the kingdom. And so I don't know idle. We've never met. I'm never sitting around twiddling my thumbs trying to figure out what do I need to be doing. I want to leave here, pour it out like a drink offering. I want God to squeeze everything out of me that's in me. So I'm in the midst of several different projects right now. As I mentioned, we have the next series of conversations coming up. There's going to be the conversation on race dealing with colorism with the assorted chocolate women. That's going to be the next 4 weeks for the rest of the month of August. Behind that, we do have another conversation on race dealing with the voting issue. You'll get a chance to hear more from Corey and several others. That's going to be a diverse panel of people. But then we also have a show coming up dealing with race, dealing with life after incarceration. Because we do want to tackle this whole issue of what do you do when you've had prison life and now you're out? How do you make it in today's society? And so there are a series of other shows coming up dealing with this issue of race. The conversation needs to continue. I would encourage those of you who are watching to keep the conversation going. Other projects, and one of the things that might be a surprise to the guys, I am actually doing a book project on the conversations on race with the BMWs. And so these conversations will all be part of that book that's going to be coming out. And so I'll be following up with each of you. And you're going like, wow, yeah, for real? Absolutely. So these stories will continue to live on beyond just this conversation. So I'm going to be doing a book project on this as well as the colorism show. My co-host for that, Denise Smith, and I, we started the project years ago. She'll tell you about that next week. But we're going to go ahead and finally get that out. So again, like I said, I'm trying to finish some things. I'm midst of a book project right now dealing with grief and loss issues with my prayer partner, Rhonda J. Smith. And so I have several book projects, so keep me in prayer because there's a lot of issues, a lot of hurting people, and a lot of things that we can speak life to. And so again, I just want to thank all of you who've tuned in for the last 4 weeks with the BMWs, enjoying these conversations on race. Guys, thank you so much for staying with me, for holding out for all 4 weeks. Any closing remarks before I close out? Yeah, Val.
I want to say, now you say people have been trying to get a hold of us?
That's right.
Well, listen, I know Halle Berry been stalking me, right? So make sure you tell her that I'm a married man. I've been married 26 years, together for 31. So tell Halle, leave me alone. I'm not going to take her calls no more. So I need you to let her know, stop calling me.
Listen, and you know, and it's so funny about people trying to get in touch with you. I feel bad. I made the comment on that very first show about how I felt like Oprah, and I know Oprah's trying to do conversations on colorism. She's doing conversations with Black men, and so we tend to be having the same conversations. But I'm not trying to take anybody's place. I got a place, and I'm thanking God that He gave me a place. And so it's the conversations on race with Dr. Sabrina Black. All right. Anybody else got closing remarks? I love you guys. Thank you so much. It's been a blessing to be with you. And I pray that those of you who have been following us and watching have also been blessed, that you've been educated, you've been enlightened, that you've learned some things. I would encourage you to scroll back through my feed, find the first 4 shows. I mean, these guys have been so popular. They've had thousands of hits on all the shows. And so it's because they had something to say, and something to say that was worthwhile hearing and life transforming. So I would encourage you to go back, watch some of the previous shows, share with your families and friends, do some watch parties, but be enlightened, be encouraged, and realize that we are one people, we are one race, the human race. God loves all of us, and we do need to figure out how to love one another and be community. God bless you all. Take care, guys. Love you. Bye-bye. Just say that's the out button. What's your thumb, Corey? All right, fade to black to my shot.